Audubon and joining the Christmas bird count and getting grilled over a sighting of a ringneck duck that I had. And I thought the rigors of important data always impressed me and made me want to be a better birder right from the start. So I always appreciated that start from Grand Rapids Audubon. So I'll get the picture started. This is from a trip I made in 2017 to Borneo with Allison Villig, who is a Southwest Michigan resident who lives in Traverse City now, and Warren Whaley, who's also was from the Kalamazoo area, who's also moved up north with me. So we always invite more birders up this way. We started this trip as an inexpensive way to go to Borneo, kind of a scouting trip. There were 4 of us, Allison, me, Warren Whaley, and Scott Schutte. And just like a lot of us, the way we're feeling now, we just wanted to get out of Dodge and see some birds. And I had visions of seeing this Oriental paradise flycatcher that you see here. So we'll start out with this. And Landon, let me know if this is working out as we start this.
All right.
This is one of the target, and we headed out to Borneo via the Middle East and Qatar. And Borneo is the 3rd largest island in the world right here. And Malaysia has about 1/3 of Borneo. And the area we went to was the province of Sabah right at the tip. And you can see this section of Borneo right next to the country of Brunei. Before we left, we had to get our shots. I went to the travel clinic, and the doctor there circled Sabah as a area with high malaria risk. So we did have to take malarial prophylaxis. Allison wrote this article for American Birding Association on Dermacot, which was the forest area in the interior of the country that we were heading to. And before we went, we had to study really hard. We had 31 of these confusing babblers and 26 bulbuls and 16 species of blue flycatchers, also 18 species of woodpeckers and 13 species of kingfishers. One of the first places we were going to go was the Kinabatagan River, which is a refuge or an oasis of wild Borneo next to the ever-present oil palm plantations that you can see that border it on this side. We flew into Kota Kinabalu and flew past the huge mountain, Mount Kinabalu, which is 14,000 feet. It's the highest mountain between New Guinea and the Himalayas. And the first day there, this is Allison and Warren, we got to stop at the rice paddies near Tempasuke Plains, where we picked up 14 species of shorebirds, including a target species I wanted to see, a pratincoal, which I'd missed when I lived in Africa. And we traveled from there, flew into the city of Sandakan. And this is right up in the northeast corner of Borneo. We spent some time at the fish market getting some supplies and snacks. And if you fly overseas in the Orient, I always recommend stopping and seeing the amazing displays of food. On the way, we went by some typical housing up on stilts for, in case of typhoons. And we went out just outside of Sandakan is the national park Sepalak. And Sepalak is the home of the Rainforest Discovery Center. And here they have a setup of an incredibly sturdy steel canopy walkway, which goes up hundreds and hundreds of feet into the canopy of this lowland tropical forest. There's also an orangutan rehabilitation center here. And this is the place where most tourists see what I'll put in quotes as wild orangutans. That the orangutan are taken here, orphaned from the wild and rehabilitated and let loose into this forest to see if they can survive and be reintroduced. And here's some of the incredible walkways that enable you to see the good bird species of Sepalak, including some 150-foot canopy towers, which get you up right at eye level with some of the fantastic hornbills. This is the rhinoceros hornbill with that up-curved casque, and they're one of the most common, easily seen, guaranteed to see hornbills in Borneo. And you'll also see some of the 16 blue flycatchers. This is a black-naped monarch. And when we went there, before we left, I read about the travel warnings. There was a terrorist group called Abu Sayyaf in the northeast part of Borneo in the Philippines. And they abduct people from boats on the northeast coast. And this was our boat on the northeast coast. So I had that in the back of my mind as we set off on the Kinabatagan River. And this is a former birding group that arrived just before we did. Just kidding on that, in the back of my mind. But we made it back through the mangrove forest along the river and past some homes and fishing villages. And here we arrived at our lodge. This is Abai Jungle Lodge. And this is all in a mangrove swamp, and the tide comes in and there's water right under the houses, but the boardwalks go all through the mangrove forest here. And this was my cabin number 8. I got a cabin all to myself for a good night's sleep after all the jet lag, and looking forward to a night's sleep. But I had the concern about terrorists on the back of my mind. And that night, as I lay in bed, it was all quiet. And then I heard a gunshot ring out just in the close by. And I jumped out of bed and I listened and I didn't hear anything else. And then I heard another gunshot ring out. So I stood up, and the only thing I had was a little personal jackknife, and I grabbed that. And I was looking out the window, hiding under the window, checking to see if they were dragging victims out on this boardwalk. And I never saw anything, so fell back to sleep. Got up the next morning and I talked to Scott and Allison, and they hadn't been concerned. And I asked them if they heard gunshots, and they said, "Are you kidding?" And they said, "Haven't you ever slept in a cabin in the mangroves with the coconuts falling on the roof?" So I was able to relax after that. This is just a sound clip of this is the boardwalk area here. Just gives you a little idea of what we were seeing, but it looks like the clip is kind of hesitating. So I'll skip over that one. And we went up the river, birding along the way on the trail, Sukai. And a beautiful place. It was very hot. And as we went there, we were greeted by the people working there with moist towels to wipe off our sweat, and fruit drinks and fantastic food. And the birding was excellent there with birds like emerald dove and the white fish eagle. And these were quite common in the areas along the edges of the river. And this was some of the limestone cliffs we saw along the river. And I'll try, this is another clip here. We saw Borneo pygmy elephants along the way. Some of the rarest elephants in the world. There's only about 2,000 left now. Let's see if we can get this to play here. Well, we'll skip over that. Sorry about that. This is one of the little baby elephants in the group. And loads of butterflies. There's well over 200 butterfly species that you can easily see here. And that's the golden birdwing, which is a very common species. And back to the birds, this is one of the broadbill species, the black and yellow broadbill, the most common one, and easily seen in gardens around the lodges. And we set out from this lodge on the Menangle River. And here they had set up walkways for the orangutans, so they, in this fragmented landscape, they could go from place to place without being locked into small fragments. Saw stork-billed kingfishers there, and black and red broadbills. And these are wrinkled hornbills, one of the less common species we saw. And russet-back kingfishers. And we all thought this one looked a little bit like our former president with its hairstyle. This is the gray-headed woodpecker. And this is one of the, sorry, excuse me. This is a distant shot of one of the flying mammals of Borneo. Borneo is famous for flying mammals and amphibians. This is the flying lemur called the kalugo. And they climb up into the very tops of trees, and their predators, the margay cats and leopards, try to chase them from tree to tree. And this is the brown-chested eagle. And proboscis monkeys that were real common along the water courses. They eat the leaves of mangroves, and since they have mostly leaves and seeds, they're very low energy and easy to see. They don't run away very fast. I'm not a herpetologist. Maybe someone at the end of the show can tell me this snake. This was sitting in the same place by our cabins for 3 days. And Borneo has one of the highest diversities of trees in the entire world due to its refuge rainforest, which has been unaltered for 23 million years. In Borneo, on equivalent of 40, I've got a 40-acre piece of property up here in Manistee, and I have 30 species of trees, and I'm trying to increase the diversity. In the same 40-acre typical plot of lowland forest in Borneo, there would be 800 species of trees. There are 3,000 species of trees in the country. And this is a oriental magpie robin. And these are long-tailed macaques and another eagle. and blue-throated bee eater all seen along the way. And monitor lizards, and another hornbill species, the pied hornbill. And along the course of the rivers, we were actually able to see some of the wild orangutans, but the way to see them was in the evening from a boat, and they would be way up in a tree about 150 feet up. This one was making a nest. That's why the picture is poor, because it's a telephoto lens at dusk. And that's the way to see the wild orangutans. Real hard to see them up close. These are some pictures of what the nest looks like with a young. The male orangutan has fat flanges on the face. And those are the breeding males compared to the non-breeding male. And this is a female with a young. And also along this river, we saw the rarest hornbill of all, the curl-crested hornbill. It just flew right over our boat. And that was a tough shot, standing up, trying not to fall in the water. We left our boat for our second leg, stopping once more on the way at Sepalak. And back on the canopy towers. And we stayed at Pondakan D near Sepalak. A lot of the world travelers, the young people, stayed in these long houses. You can see the hammocks down below, and it was only about $5 a night to stay there. And I had the deluxe room, I'll show you in a second, for about $10 a night. It's back to the canopy. This was my shower with an outside view. And this was my bedroom with the mosquito net, which didn't seem too necessary. There weren't too many bugs. I was happy to see. In Sepalak, there's still some old growth diptecarp trees that are hundreds of years old. And also fantastic birds like Timok sunbird. There are sunbirds in Borneo rather than hummingbirds. And red-bearded bee eaters. And this is another one of the big diptecarp trees. And this is a kind of a wide angle view, seeing how it's a massive forest emergent. And here's, I just took this from a Borneo book. This is how big some of these trees get, rivaling even the redwoods in the United States. At Sepalak, this is one of the birds I missed seeing when you heard it. Pittas are one of the most sought after birds in Borneo. Very tough to see, but beautiful in plumage. And we headed back out. This was a view from a restaurant on our way, a secondary forest. And through some villages on our way up to the mountain at Mount Kinabatagan, we stopped at some mid-elevation forest and saw the crested jay. And we went on a long hike up at Pouring Springs, part of the national park. And this ended up being a 10-hour hike past waterfalls. We had our hiking gear and shorts on, and we'd get, after 2-3 hours of climbing, we'd see these women in hijab with just sandals on, sitting and enjoying the waterfalls. You can see the woman in the lower left part of the picture. And this was the home of the Rafflesia, the largest flower in the world. They get up to 22 pounds. And they're 3 feet wide. and they're pollinated by insects. And this is part of our trail up the mountain, and made it up to the top finally, and saw a few good birds like this buffy fish owl and large-billed blue flycatcher. And in the evening here, we went on a night walk with a ranger with lights, and we got to see a slow loris. And then back up on the mountains, we had to get ready for an area with more leeches. There's any of the forest in Borneo with real high rainfall, there are lots of leeches. This is one that you don't have to worry about. It's a carnivorous giant leech that eats other leeches. And while we were there, my friend Warren, who's a pharmacist, invented a concoction with nicotine and epinephrine that he made into a spray. And when we had our first leeches, I had the honor of trying his spray. I sprayed it on the leech, and they spun around and just jumped right off from his skin. So I think he should market that one. Up on the mountain, we go past a lot of tea plantations where you can see there's not much forest left. And then finally, we got near the peak of Kinabalu. And even here on the edges of the forest, there are still homes being cut into the side of the national forest. But there's still beautiful spaces left and a lot of birds like this scarlet minivet. This is our cafeteria when we would have breakfast and dinner, and we could sit out on the patios and see fantastic birds. And many of the birds are difficult to see in Asia because people try to catch them and shoot them or sell them as songbirds. So you have to get distant shots. This is a golden-naped barbet. And near that same lodge, we had the Bornean green magpie. And here's Warren climbing up one of the muddy, difficult trails. Still, it was real worth it to see the good birds. And another shot of the Borneo magpie, green magpie, and some of the montane forests that are still preserved by the national park. And this is a blue fairy. This is actually one related to orioles. And this was our pretty deluxe accommodations here at the national park at the mountain. And this is my room that I had all to myself. Seemed like unbelievable luxury. And in all the places we were, I saw these arrows that said Kiblat. And I didn't know what that was until I looked it up. And what it means is it's the direction towards the Kaaba in Mecca for Muslims to pray in that direction. This is one of the areas on the side of the mountain. And another of the good montane birds here. This is the Bornean tree pie. In one of our trails. I hope I'm giving you a good feel for what it's like here. And very lush, lots of streams and little waterfalls and little nooks and crannies to look for the birds in the areas. And around every bend, we'd find something interesting, like this Bornean leaf bird. It's in one of the endemics of Borneo. There's about close to 500 species of birds here. And we left the mountain, our next leg of the journey, packing our packs together. And along the way, we stopped at some towns, and I'm an optometrist, so I wanted to see, this was a little optometry office here. And we had to go through hours of oil palm plantations and dirt roads on our vehicle to get finally here to the gates of Dermakat Forest Preserve. It's one of the best birding areas in Borneo. This was the little forestry village, probably 100 miles away from any town. They've got their own generators, and we were in this cabin at the top of the hill. It looks, maybe if you're from Michigan, that looks chilly and damp, like it's fog there, but that's humidity. It's about 90 degrees and humid. Dermakat's about 360 square miles of forest. It's a sustainable forest. There's some old growth, and then rotating areas of logging. Some of the signs going into the area, I'll explain some of these in a little bit, but they pointed out that these are some of the wild animals to beware of, according, the elephants and orangutans and bearded pig, clouded leopard, bitong, and this is supposed to be a gibbon, although they said they made it look like Michael Jackson. And see if this video clip comes. This is a sound of gibbons in the forest. I'm sorry about the connection. It looks like that's not working. Okay, we'll skip that too, sorry. And some pictures of the northern Bornean gibbon that we saw flying through the treetops with their long arms. And this is our expedition vehicle that we went down the roads on to get to the far recesses of the Dermakat Preserve. And this is a roadway to give you an idea of what the road is like. I think you get the idea there. This is the area we also were able to see orangutans here. And one of my favorites was the helmeted hornbill, which is an endangered species. And we saw these flying right overhead. They're very limited in numbers now. And it's because in areas in the east, they take their horns for ivory. We did see a lot of flying mammals like pygmy squirrels, and our guide was thrilled with this one. This is Hose's flying pygmy squirrel. The first time he'd ever seen one in about 6 years of guiding. And our biggest success was one morning seeing this huge leopard walk in front of us right at dawn. And it stopped to stare at us, and we got good pictures. This is a clouded leopard, one of the big cats of the world, and probably the second hardest of the large cats to see, next to the snow leopard of the Himalayas. The clouded leopards are very secretive jungle leopards in Borneo. And Borneo has a high number of species because it's over the years, as the ice age has passed, the island was separate from mainland Asia every 100,000 years or so, and the island formation caused increased speciation. And then as the glaciers formed, the water levels went down, and more species immigrated into Borneo. And it included something like the western tarsier. And we would see these and some of the other species at night as we went out in the Jeep with our bright flashlights to look at the nocturnal species. There's some of the forest trails here. And this is another video clip. I'm sorry, I think I'll skip it. I mean, I'll try just so you can hear the cicadas if it works. Yeah, we'll go on. Sorry about that again. Just a big bee nest here. Bearded bee eater. This is a blue and scarlet pitta, and we were able to see about 5 species of pittas here. And this is the group we joined up with some groups from Great Britain while we were at Dermacat, and a lot of eyes made for more birds. And so some of the forest edge areas, as imagine a orangutan up in the tops of one of those trees, how hard it was to see some of those birds, animals. And this is one of the large flying squirrels about the size of a red fox. Yeah, I saw bearded pigs here too. And forest emergent trees. On the roads out, these are some of the housing for the loggers and workers at Dermacat. And that was our cabin. We had even had AC. It was very comfortable. And lots of amphibians. I wish I could have identified half the things I saw there. Every trip I go on, I take a picture of the worst toilet of the trip. And this was the worst toilet winner for our trip. It's a typical Asian squat toilet, but this isn't as bad as some I've seen. And this one's another wrinkled hornbill here. And then a sunset here on the Kinabatagan River near Dermacat, and the sunrise. And we had Bornean falconets in the area, and these are the smallest falcon in the world, about the size of a clenched fist, and they feed on dragonflies. So you can imagine how adept they are in flight to catch a dragonfly. And some forest emergence at Dermacat, and this is one of the logging camps and some more little bit lower grade housing for the workers. And here's our vehicle with our crew with Warren and Allison. Allison riding up on top, spotting. And we were headed out. We went by one of the signs, and this is a notice for workers. And the sign translates to the devil's notice, stop and read. And it says, want to go home early, want to happy, and that means mess around, like afternoon delight. And then want to escape work? Well, if yes, then come with me, the devil. And a way to get people to keep working in that hot climate there. As we left Dermacat, we had to go once again through leaving the forest. You can see the forest up on the hill and entering the monoculture palm oil. And this is a palm oil station where people live, where all the forest has been cleared. And back on the road behind the trucks, past the mountain. And our last bird of the trip was the blue-naped parrot near the capital city. There's still a few hundred of those left. Back looking at the China Sea before our flight home, and just remembered all the palm oil plantations on the way out, that hour after hour of driving through this, and instead of seeing heliconias and diversity like this, we saw areas that could no longer support the rhinos. There used to be 3 species of rhinos in Borneo, and now there's only one, and it's this one at the top, the Sumatran rhino. And unfortunately, there's only believed to be 2 left. They're being heavily guarded in a secret location. There's as you're probably aware of, the campaigns to limit palm oil consumption, which is used in candy bars and all types of foods. But all the palm oil is causing the drastic loss of habitat for orangutans. This is an area that used to be forest that we drove through, and another area of what palm oil plantations look like. And you can do something about that. The Rainforest Trust, I'm donating your contribution to me to this. You can see that they can buy an acre of land for $1.37 in Borneo to protect helmeted hornbills and pygmy elephants and all the diversity there. And it's a great organization, ranked the highest ranking of Charity Navigator. So we flew home through the Middle East, and I'm always amazed. We had to fly to Atlanta, Georgia before coming back to Michigan. And our flight went right over Sault Ste. Marie and Traverse City and my hometown. I asked the stewardess if they could just let me out. And that was our circuitous flight path. But I always remember the sunbirds of Borneo. Another great bird that we saw, the great Argus, one of the pheasants of Asia. And some of the woodpecker species that we saw, and the birds we missed, like the endemic Borneo bristlehead, and the largest remaining woodpecker in the world now, the great slaty woodpecker, which is larger than, just a little larger than ivory-billed. And I think that's all I got. So Landon, if